Hey, I didn't see you there. Welcome to another video. My name is Matt and this is Code Journey. If you are looking to learn about developers' tools and how to use them to boost your productivity on web development, this is the video for you. You will learn everything about inspect elements, how to add styles, classes, and modify the HTML and styles of any page using these tools. I will also teach you how to debug your JavaScript files and use the different tools and windows to see the current stack, the values of different variables, and how to test different commands in the console to catch those sneaky bugs that we all hate. Let's jump right into the code. For today's video, I decided to put together a to-do list so we don't miss anything, and we as developers usually work best if we have our task clearly defined, and in here we will be covering all these topics one by one. The developer tools are a very powerful and big topic to cover, and we are not going to be able to go through all of it, but I will say with this stuff on this list, you will be covered for like 90% of the tasks you will need developers tools to do. For designing and debugging your code and working in web development, you will be set to start boosting your performance using the developers tools. So what are the developers tools? Well, basically there are tools for developers, of course, as the name says, that are inside of our browser. In this case, we are going to be working with the developers tools for Chrome. You access the developer tools by pressing the key F12 that displays this window. If we maximize it, we will see a lot of stuff we are going to be covering. So the first topic to cover will be inspecting elements. For that, we are going to use our previous application that I created, our previous website I created for the tutorial of VS Code. If you haven't looked at it and you want to start using a code editor, feel free to click on this box that will appear on top, and it will take you to a tutorial on VS Code. So after we launch our console, our developer tools with F12, you will see that once you start moving through, just hovering with the mouse over different parts of the HTML DOM, then everything gets highlighted in our site. So to inspect an element, the thing that we have to do is click on this first button that has the pointer and a square, and if you hover over it, it says select an element in the page to inspect it. If you click on that, then you can move around on the website you are just browsing, and it goes highlighting every item on the site, right? And if I click on one, then it will take me directly to it on the HTML code. That is inspecting an element. Basically, it allows you to see how the HTML is structured, and you can go through each element and see what the code is for that element. How does it do what it is doing on the website, right? So in this case, we see that it is an image with a source of images hello.png. It has an alt attribute and a width. So if we just open up a little bit more our developers tools in here, we will see that we get the tree of HTML in here, and on the side we get a tab for styles. That is the styles for each element that we see on the website. So for example, let's modify this a little bit. Something that looks very bad in here is how the card grows, right? Because this was designed to be like this for a smaller screen size or for mobile, basically. For example, we can try to limit the max width of the container. If we select the container, then we can try to add different styles to this element in particular and see if that solves our problem. In this case, how the container or the card looks once the page grows. So if we put, for example, a max width, as I said before, of, I don't know, 800 pixels, just to try a value, we can see how that impacts our application. So if we move into here, you can see that it grows, and then after 800 pixels it stops growing the container and just adds white space to the sides. I am still not sold that 800 pixels is good enough. I would like it to be a little bit smaller, so let's try another value and let's put, I don't know, 650. And if we put 650, then our container looks a little bit better. You can see that everything remains mostly centered, and it scales down to 500 pixels. That is the minimum for this type of view, and it grows up to 650, and then starts adding white space to the sides. So now I'm comfortable with this change. I think it looks good enough for what I want to do with this, and then I can just copy the style I created, go back to my solution and add it to the container. So I can save this. My solution will auto reload because we are using live server, and then you can see that the styles work as expected there. This is so important. I think I didn't mention that. But if I add something else in here, for example, I don't know, let's say background color red. If I add a background color red, this is only local, right? This is locally for this page on this request. This is only HTML and CSS static in here. If I reload, the styles are lost, right? That's why this is only for trying and seeing how something looks and if it solves a problem, but then you have to move that solution to your code, your actual code. So you already have an idea of how to inspect elements using this tool, move through all the tree of elements, the DOM we have in our HTML, and also add styles to each element and toggle the values of those. We can also modify elements, and now is the time that I will show you some serious and real hacking techniques. I will put on my hoodie, that is my signal, my hacker mode on, and I will show you how to really skyrocket your Twitter account. If you want those sweet followers and have a huge audience, you don't need to buy those expensive scores and do all the hard work and tweet every day. No. All you really need is to know your HTML and some help from the developer tools. What you're going to be doing is press the F12 key, open the developer's tools in your profile, select an element, inspect it, and get to the follower count. If you get in here, you will see there is an span with some classes, and then this is the amount of followers you have. You can do this, and boom, Hackerman. You will have 10,000 followers just like that. Okay, jokes aside, of course, this is only locally. This doesn't affect at all your Twitter account. If I just refresh the page, I get back to my 1,646 followers. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. Now let's take a look at a real example. What can we do with this modify element? Well, this comes from something that I do every week at work, and I actually have done something like this today in the morning, and that is to kind of mock up a change over your current application. If you are like me, you don't also want to go into Figma and do the mockup and everything. So the easy approach for us developers is to just modify a little bit of HTML, add an element, add some styles so it looks good enough, just to show an idea, to convey ideas of how you want this to look, and show that to the stakeholder to get an approval. This is a nice example of a little form with an email address and a password, and we can use the developer tools to inspect an element, get to the email div, for example, and then we can open the div and see inside of it we have a label and an input, right? Let's imagine that our requirement is to add a little message, right? A message like an alert in here, saying that the user won't be able to modify the email address later on, because we use it as a, I don't know, as a primary key, or it is information that we use to identify our user, and it is permanent. So we want to tell that to the user in advance, so they are aware that the email address they put in there is very important and they won't be able to modify it. This is not a very good practice, actually. We should allow users to modify their email address, but let's imagine that is our requirement, just for the sake of this example. So we open the developer tools once again, because I had like a couple of them and I wasn't sure which one was the correct one. And after we get to the piece we want to modify, we can do right click on top of the element we want to modify, and we can see this contextual menu that allows us to add attribute, and edit as HTML. If we do that, then everything becomes like a text editor, and you can modify the HTML in place. So I know I want to add an alert message inside of the div and to the side of the email address. So let's just do that. We will add another div down here with some classes. It will say alert, I think it's alert warning for the yellow color, and the role should be alert. And if we close that in, then here goes the message, the alert that we are going to show to the user, and the message will be email address cannot be modified later on, choose wisely. So we can close this div, and let's see how this looks. Okay, that's not exactly what we want, but it is getting there. How can we improve this? Okay, first we can select the alert and say, okay, this is the standard alert for Bootstrap, but in this case we want something like a little bit smaller, so we can override the value of the padding, for example. So we can remove this to 0.5 and 0.25, and that is looking a little better. Then we can also make this float to the right, and that is looking a little better. And the other problem I had is that I think we don't need this div, and that was my bad. We don't want to show this as a block, but rather keep the label. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, that's about it. You can play around, use it to modify and add elements, see how everything looks. Then we are going to be working on the box model and its visualization. So we have everything in here that we need. This is our HTML, this is our CSS, and this is our JavaScript. Everything open at once, and we also have the application showing to the side. So to see the box model, I'm going to be creating a couple of divs in here inside of the card body that will allow us to understand better how the box model works and how you can see it working on the developer tools. So for that, let's create a div that will be, I don't know, example box model, and inside of it we can create another one that will be so now we have the background color green for our content, and then for the container, that is the whole container, it is red. So that will separate the padding from the content, because otherwise this will be more confusing, I think. So if we inspect the container, we see 150 times 150, that is the content, that is the green square. Then we have the padding, that is the space inside of the container, but separating the border from the content, right? So we have the content, that is the green square. We have the content, that is the green square. We have the border, that is the limit, the border and the content. The border is the limit of the container, and then the padding is the space between the content and the border, right? And the last thing is the margin. The margin is the space between the container, that is delimited by the border, and all the other elements that are around. In this example, we don't have elements to the sides or in the bottom, but we have elements on top. The do your magic button is the element that is in near contact to our container. And you can see once I hover over the margin that says 30, because the margin is 30 pixels, you can see that is the exact space between the border of the container and the button on top, right? So that is basically the box model that you have to understand to work well with CSS and aligning and separating stuff. Every time you see something aligns weird or separates too much or too little, just inspect the element, go down and start hovering over each part of this element, and it will probably give you a clue of what is happening. Okay, so that's about it for the HTML and CSS and structure of pages and how to inspect elements. Now let's start working with some JavaScript. If we go to the developers tools, you will see that after the Elements tab, you have one that is console. That is a JavaScript console. You can put whatever JavaScript you want in here and it will execute it and will allow you to print out values and test stuff. Remember that every developer tools is connected to the site you press F12 in. So for example, if I do an alert that says hello console, I did this before, it will trigger the alert in the website saying hello console and just returns to you undefined because you are not returning anything. You can also create variables. For example, you can create variables, then you can print out the variables. So I created a variable, let my name be Matt, and because I didn't return anything, it just shows undefined. But then if I enter the name of the variable, then the console returns the value. We can also work with data structures. For example, with an array, we can create a complex variable like an array. Let's say, I don't know, my colors, and this can be an array with blue, red, and yellow. And if we do that, then we can print out and see what my colors holds, and we can work with that. We can do my colors dot map, for example, color, then color dot slice 1, whatever. And because I am just slicing the first value, then we get Lu, Ed, and Elo, which is funny. If we take a look at our code, we have a div with an ID of my cool images. And we can go ahead and do a document get element by ID, my cool images, and this will return the div, right? This div is the one, is the container that has the two images that are very cool. So you can see how powerful this is, because it is basically a free way to execute any JavaScript. So am I missing something? Yeah, we can try to further demonstrate this. We can add an event to our site in there. So for example, we can do the same document get element by ID, and use onClick. Use the onClick and set it up with a lambda function that will say alert, you have been hacked. And if we do that, then we have just associated a function that the only thing it does is show an alert whenever someone clicks on the element my cool images. So if we go ahead and click on that, you will see that an alert pops up and says you have been hacked. And a lot of malicious malware take advantage of this and show you different alerts and things that you can click on, and they can profit on some way with that. Other thing I want to show you is this console will show you errors and warnings whenever you have something wrong in your application. If, for example, let's say in here I create a variable, my name, that we have been working with that, and says Matt. And if I try to access my name.color or do my name.print, if I do that and save, when I go ahead, oh, of course, because this has not executed, if I go ahead and click on do this, this is saved because, oh, because I didn't save the HTML. I thought it didn't update because I was still seeing the square, right? And if I click on this do your magic button, that button is the one that on click triggers the function hide that we just modified and added the variable Matt with the variable my name with the value Matt, and try to call a function named print, and it does not exist. It is a variable with a value, it is a string. It is not an object that understands the message print, right? So if we go back to our developer tools, whenever I click on that, you will see that an error appears on the console that says uncaught type error, my name.print is not a function. Of course, because my name is just a variable with a string and I am trying to call a function that does not exist, basically, right? So keep in mind whenever you're working on a website or a web app that all the errors will show up in here and also warnings, and you can take a look at all the details that shows here and where it is coming from. And the last one, the last topic of this video, if you have enjoyed so far, don't forget to smash the like button, and if you are new, subscribe. That will allow me to keep providing valuable content and tutorials like this one, so you can keep learning and become a great developer. So let's jump right into the last topic, that will be debugging with JavaScript. Debugging your JavaScript, sorry. So in this example, we already have an error, and let's assume we don't know why this is not working. I just want to print my name and it is not working. Why? So what you can do is debug your JavaScript going into the sources tab, and you will see all the sources that your application is using. And in here you can double click the script.js. I had this already open, but if not, just double click it and it will appear in here. And this allows you to add breakpoints and debug your code. So basically I click in here and that shows the red dot, that is a breakpoint that basically stops the execution at that point and allows you to see what is happening, what are the values of the variables, what is the call stack, etc. and try and see what is happening, why your code breaks. So let's give it a try. If we put the breakpoint and click on do your magic, you will see that the page says pause in debugger, and then the application stops in here. And then to control this debugging flow, you have these buttons on the right top corner. The first one is to resume the script execution. That will basically run everything. The next one is to step over to the next function. That will be go to the next step. Following one is to step into a function call. Let's assume if you have several functions or several files, then you can step into to see one level down and keep going into deeper levels until you get to the root cause. In this example, we don't have more functions to debug, so we are just going to do a step over. And then you can see that this already goes, it already gives you some information. So it says the variable my name now has a value of Matt. And if I hover over the my name, I see the value is Matt. This is what I expected. And of course, it says print is undefined because there is no definition for print inside of my name. So when I see this is the error, this is the line, and it is undefined, of course, because my name does not have a definition for that. I can also add the variable to my watch. My watch is a way where you can watch all the values of your variables. So if I type in here my name, I will see that it only holds the value of Matt. So then I realize and say, oh, if I want to print the value, I have to console log it and not send a message because my name does not understand that message. And I can go ahead and fix my code and say print my name, remove the faulty line, save it, and after I run that, I think that should have already updated, and the code is now different. I click that and it stops on the breakpoint again, but this time it will console log hello kind person, and why, oh sorry, user message. I didn't knew why it was not showing, because I selected errors and there are no errors, but there is a user message that says Matt, and that is the value we just printed in the console log my name. This was a very basic example, but I did not want to complicate it a lot to not make this video more extensive. Those are the basics. You can have a watch, you can move through each statement, you can put as many breakpoints as you want and open as many JavaScript files as you want. This will allow you to take a look into the variables and the state of your application and hopefully debug and find the errors on your JavaScript files. That will be all for today's video. I hope you learned a couple of things that will help you in your everyday web development. If you're new here, don't forget to click the subscribe button and leave a like if you enjoyed this. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one.